Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy, and I want to talk about the brand new American blockbuster, Willy Wonka, and I want to talk about the political speech that's in this film, and the political action it calls for, and the opportunity that Vivek Ramaswamy has to use this film to win the 2024 U.S. presidency, and the ideas that it contains that could help him to be a great president during that period, right? To surpass the presidents of old. And I think there's a lot here. So specifically what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about using the presidency. This is the opportunity that Vivek Ramaswamy would have. He would have the opportunity to use the presidency, the power of the presidency, to start a desperately needed conversation. A conversation that would take wit and wisdom to even participate in, but I think there are low millions of Americans that could participate in this conversation and solve a problem, or actually begin to find solutions for a problem that is incredibly complicated and is incredibly fraught, right? And that is, what do we do with the people who, what do we do with American commerce organizations that take advantage, okay, but are not criminal, right? And this is perfectly depicted in the film. So I want to talk about it as it's depicted in the film. And then I want to talk about how Vivek Ramaswamy could use the power of the presidency to change this, to change America forever, and give a structure for people who are not incented to do well for other human beings directly, but are incented to do well for other people indirectly, to do well for other people if it is to their advantage. And this is so one, I just want to thank you. I love this platform that YouTube allows us to really discuss things with some nuance and to discuss things that haven't really been done. So let me explain what I'm talking about in the film, and then let's look at how we would deal with, how Vivek Ramaswamy specifically could deal with this in America. All right, so what are we talking about here? Okay, so in the film, by the way, spoilers for Willy Wonka here. All right, for Wonka 2023, Timothee Chalamet's film. So let's dive right in here, and Hugh Grant's film also. So let's dive in here. So Wonka arrives in this modern city, right? The city is a conglomerate of European cities. It's part Paris, part Berlin, part London. You know what I mean? It's major cities of Europe, right? So he arrives in this modern city, and his small business is to set up shop and to sell the best chocolate that's ever been made for a very reasonable price, so that even people who aren't wealthy can afford to have a bit of chocolate to enjoy themselves and to really, and to enjoy themselves and to get a little for themselves, which I think is really, fascinating, right? So he is a good, kind businessman who wants to do business in a good and kind way, right? Now, in the movie, the chocolate cartel is shown to be engaged in price fixing. The three largest chocolatiers are clearly price fixing, and that's the least of what they're doing. They also are directly bribing the chief of the police, and they are murdering people. They're attempting to murder people, right? So they're evil incarnate. But there's a business in the middle, okay? So this is the point. You have a business that is doing a good job, that is really doing a fantastic job in Wonka's business is good and kind, right? And he is a good and kind person. Then you have these evil cartel members who are clearly engaged in evil. But there's somebody in the middle, and this is who I want to talk about today, right? The businesses that take advantage, right? So specifically, this is the Scrubbit Hotel, right, in this modern city, and it's run by Miss Scrubbit. Now, wait now, right? Now, Miss Scrubbit takes advantage of people. We're going to get into that, but also she's a little bit progressive. She's a woman-led business, right? She's cracked the glass ceiling, so there's some progressiveness there. And she employs a gentleman by the name of Bleacher, okay? And Bleacher is, he is kind of a ruffian, right? And he actually brings people to Miss Scrubbit in her hotel. And so here's what happens. So Wonka arrives on day one, and it's wintertime in this modern city, and he has no place to stay, and he has no money, right? So he goes to a bench and begins to curl up to sleep through the winter night, right? And Bleacher comes along and goes, hey, are you thinking about sleeping on that bench there? And Wonka's like, yeah, I don't have a sovereign, and this is what I got to do, right? And Bleacher's like, no, you don't want to do that. You could wake up dead. And this is real, right? Like, he's not wrong. There are many unhoused people who tried to sleep through a winter night and woke up dead. And, well, you know what I mean, right? And so, and Wonka was literally one nod off away from dying. He absolutely, no blanket, even by his own, like, not a good coat, right? Easily could have frozen to death. But Bleacher's like, hey, chill. Don't do that, right? Here's what you want to do. You want to come with me, right? And so you want to come with me, and when you come with me, what we're going to do is we are going to get you to the Scrubbit Hotel. So he takes Wonka to the Scrubbit Hotel, right? And when Wonka comes in, there's a place, and she's like, hey, you could pay us tomorrow, one sovereign. And then, yes, you could pay us the one sovereign tomorrow, and you have to sign here. And then she unfolds it, and there's a little slot that says, pull here to see all the details. So there's fine print. And Noodle actually pokes her head out and says, hey, read the fine print, right? And then Wonka pulls out the fine print, which is literally pages long, pretends to look over it, and then signs because he's illiterate, right? This gets interesting, right? The next day he comes to pay his one sovereign owed, which a police officer gave to him. So even there, he's just signing out of mercy, right? Like, because he's just the sovereign he's given, but the sovereign isn't enough. She's like, hey, there's a one sovereign charge. You warmed your cockles over on the fire. Cockle warming is a charge. You use the stairs, that's a charge. And you use the water, that's a charge. So you owe me more. You actually owe me 10,000 sovereigns, and you're going to stay here and you're going to work it off one sovereign a day, right? Now you're like, wait a second, this is terrible what she's doing, right? This is in between, right? She is clearly not a good, kind business person, right? But she's also not murdering people. It's not clear that what she's doing is evil, right? And why do I say that? Why do I say it's not clear that what she's doing is evil? Well, let's get into it. It does get very interesting, right? I do think it gets very interesting what she's actually doing, right? So here's the issue. This is 100% the fault of, well, I wouldn't say 100%, but it is definitely a portion of percent fault for Wonka. And the reason why is he didn't read the fine print, right? And he could have said to Noodle, hey, I'm sorry, I'm illiterate. Can you please read this to me? And then she would have read it, and he would like, oh, I'm going to go back on that bench so I don't get charged 10,000 sovereigns tomorrow, right? The other thing is Wonka took a choice to be illiterate, right? Wait, Scott, what are you saying? He took a choice to be illiterate. He traveled the world and got the finest ingredients in the world and was clearly very proficient at getting what he wanted, right? And the reality is he had this life of adventure when he could have just stopped and went to school, right? Like the rest of the muggles, right? Like we use this magical boy who did all this journeying and, and had all this adventure, right? And this is the point, right? Like this is where we reach the point where you're like, hey, there were choices here. You chose not to read the fine print. You chose not to ask Noodle. You chose to be illiterate, right? And there are many people, if you come out illiterate, they weren't given the opportunity. They didn't have the skills. They didn't have the foresight, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case with Wonka. Like, it was clear he could do whatever he wants. He literally learned to make the best chocolate in the world. He could have made pretty good chocolate and learned how to read, right? Like, he chose, there's a point where this incredibly epic, capable journeyman could have learned how to read, right? Like, and guess what? No, it sucks. Like, it sucks sitting down and learning all the letters and, having to write down. It's not like a super awesome adventure, going to Loompa Land and getting a bunch of beans, right? Like magical beans, right? There were choices made. And this is why I'm so excited about Vivek Ramaswamy, because this is the point. What do we do with these companies that take advantage, right? And right now, that's all that's happening is people whine about them on Twitter, right? And there isn't really a conversation to be had, right? And the reality is, I'm an evangelical Christian. I do what I can to make a better world for myself, for my family, and for others. And that is done 100% in an effort to reflect the amazing, perfect life of Jesus Christ. I am a man attempting to live a life that is even a fraction of good as a perfect life that was lived by Jesus Christ. I'm on the road, right? I'm trying to be a good, kind person and to deal with other people in a good, kind manner, right? And then there are people who are like, don't show up on Sunday, literally curse the name of Jesus, and they're doing evil. But then there's this group in between, right? There's this group that's saying, hey, I'm going to save people from freezing to death, but I will charge them 10,000 sovereigns and make them work off that debt, one sovereign a day. And you're like, wait a second, Scott, they're having to work off a debt? Okay, I get what you're saying, but here's the problem, right? In the movie, it shows they all get their own individual room, they all get food, and they all get shelter. They all literally have food, clothing, and shelter, which unhoused people do not have, right? Like they are clearly in the middle, right? And the reality is we need to have a discussion as a nation of what to do with the advantage takers, right? We don't need to do anything with the good, kind businessmen, right, and businesswomen. We are desperately trying as a culture to imprison the villains, right? And we know what needs to be done there, right? And our nation does it takes too long. I think we catch the villains in the end. I do. But the reality is it just takes way too long. And we miss a few, right? But at least we're trying there. What we don't have is we don't have a way to process these people in the middle, these advantage takers, right? And that's why I'm so excited about Vivek Ramaswamy having the possibility of being our next president. And you and me, right now, in this unique time, have the power to reject the coordinated efforts of the Republicans and the Democrats to force gerontocracy on us, force sit and sign presidents on us, force two men who perfectly fit the words that David Plotz laid down, right? Doddering, incoherent, kind of incoherent, lacking energy, and invisible, right? Like, it describes both Donald Trump and President Biden at this point, right? We can reject it and say, what if we had a president who could use the power of the office to have a conversation to say, how do we fix the advantage takers? How do we acknowledge that they weren't raised with an incentive to help others without a really forced reason to do so, right? How do we talk with them, and how do we encourage them to do better for their fellow man, for their fellow woman, right? How do we encourage them to be more like the Willy Wonkas of the world, and acknowledge they're not the cartel members, right? They're not the cartel members. They're not, paying bribes to law officers. They're not seeking murder. They're not price fixing. They are taking advantage, but giving a genuine service, and doing it within the structure of the law, right? Really, really fascinating. And the reality is, Vivek Ramaswamy is so smart, so capable, right? And that he can even address subtle issues like this, right? Like jump in and actually take action in a space that is incredibly nuanced, right? And where we can move our culture forward, because we can have a type of a discussion that has literally never occurred before. I am extremely excited about that possibility, and I'm so thankful to each and every one of you for journeying with me in this unique, special time of hope. I have been here before, right? I lived in a brief twilight where the idea that Andrew Yang would be our next president, and it was so hopeful, and there was so much hope for the future, and I was really excited, and right now we have a chance. We have a chance to beat Trump. We have a chance to beat Biden. And I believe also fate very well may help us, right? These men are so old that fate may step in and give the nation a break, right? And if fate steps in, right, if old age impacts either one of these men in a way that shows the nation it doesn't matter, an 80-year-old president is a bad idea on both sides. This mistake has already been made by the Democrats. It would be foolishness and nothing else for the Republicans to repeat it, right? And I think Americans are not stupid. Like, this is an abominably horrible option. We can do better. Vivek Ramaswamy is better. Vote for Vivek Ramaswamy. Make sure that you're preparing yourself to vote for Vivek Ramaswamy in the primary, in the Republican primary. If you're not registered, get registered, right? If you're a Democrat, switch over so that you can vote in the Republican primary, right? Prepare yourself and begin having this conversation with everyone you possibly can. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.